Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Two Guys Talking. My name is Ron.
My name is Dave O'Leary.
Dave O'Leary. Whoa, there's the name O'Leary. That family has a lot of history in Chicago, doesn't it?
Right. Burn the place down.
But that's another story, I think. We're just two guys talking, and we thought we'd share just briefly a little bit about our mission statement for this channel. Dave, what do you think?
Absolutely.
So what do you think the mission statement ought to be about or entail?
Well, I think we should just bring a little brightness and a little bit of happiness to people's lives by what we have to share with them.
Oh, I think that's a little joy, maybe to counteract some of the negativity out in the environment out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's not that we had an election or anything like that this past week.
Right.
We don't really care what side of the spectrum you fall on politically.
Yes.
All we're concerned about is going forward together. And I think that that's really the purpose of this channel, is to share stories that are illuminating and to spread a little bit of happiness. And we can all go forward together and learn together, perhaps.
Yes, absolutely. It is a journey.
It is a journey. And because of that, if we say anything that is helpful to you or of interest to you, perhaps they could do what, Dave?
Like, share, and subscribe.
Like, share, and subscribe. And if you really want to get involved, leave a comment down below. We'd love to hear what you think about our channel and maybe any suggestions you might have. And they might also do what? Leave a thumbs up?
Leave a thumbs up.
Super.
Absolutely.
Obviously, the reason for that, Dave, is to help do battle with that YouTube algorithm. Because as we go forward, we'd like to share more and more with other people.
Yes.
And grow the channel. Okay. I think that's enough about the mission statement for episode number 1. So with that, no, I'm just teasing. We're not going to stop now. We just got started. So David, what do you think ought to be our first topic?
Well, Ron, since you seem to like a little bit about reading books,
I do have a few books, do I not?
how about we read about, you tell us about the book that you read that had the most impact on your life.
Oh, wow. There's so many. It's a great question. So the other thing I like about the question is it's all about me. I'm just teasing. I'm not a vain person, as you can see. If we do this, right?
Yes.
That means episode 2 is going to be about what? All about you.
All about me. Right.
So what your favorite book's going to be? Is that
Yes,
is that agreed?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hopefully you guys will agree as well. Wow, it's a good question because I've read a lot, and I still do. And I've read sci-fi. You've read sci-fi. Right?
Lots of science.
Lots of sci-fi. Andre
My
Norton,
Robert
Asimov,
Heinlein,
Heinlein,
Ben Bova,
Bova. Yes.
Arthur C. Clarke.
Arthur C. Clarke, just to mention a few. Yeah. But I've also read a number of theological and philosophy type books, because I'm always trying to understand a little more about the nature of things and why we are as we are and why things are as they are. And I read one book that might surprise you. I bet you haven't read it. And just thinking, well, just thinking about the book and my career, it's been very impactful because of this idea of a gumption trap. Does that give you a clue?
Yeah, a little bit.
The book is entitled Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Pirsig.
Right.
Have you read it?
Actually, I have. Long time ago.
Guys, I got to tell you, that's surprising because I didn't know that David had read the book, and I meet very few people that have, even though it was quite popular back in the 70s.
I think it's actually come back in and out of popularity over the years. It's one of those
it's a cult favorite, isn't it?
cult favorite, similar to Lord of the Rings.
It's not a cult, guys, but it is one of those things that has staying power, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that speaks across generations.
Yeah. I think that's a good way of putting it, because I was working during a summer, working between college semesters at a place in Arkansas called Interstate Sign Company. And I had a really good friend that was working there. I got to know him while I was working there. And he came up one day and he said, "Hey, Ron, I got a great book," because he knew I liked to read. He says, "I got a great book for you to read." And here I'm thinking, okay, Is it about how to use the tools better? But he said no. He said, have you ever heard of the book Zen and Art of Motorcycle Maintenance?
Right.
And I said, no. This was probably around 75-ish, and the book actually came out in 74, I believe.
Right.
And he said it's got some great philosophy in it. It's kind of about quality and how you conduct your life and that sort of thing. I said, really? Yeah. He goes, and he said, I think it's kind of autobiographical, but in truth, it's a fiction autobiographical book. Is that the way you would say it?
Right. Yeah.
A fictional autobiographical book. So he wrote it from his perspective as if this were his life.
Yeah.
Okay. So before I go into the why it was so impactful, and since now I know that you've read it,
Right.
what intrigued you about the book?
Well, it seemed to speak to you about certain important aspects of life. Just kind of in general, it really made you give deep thought to certain aspects that you might not ordinarily think about.
Mm-hmm. So how old were you when you read it?
No, it was probably.
See how I turned
19.
the tables on him?
I was about 19 when I read it.
Yeah.
In college.
Yeah, that's interesting because I was 75 when I read it. I wasn't 75 years. It was 1975.
You were 75.
Yeah. I'm an old soul, right? I was 20. I was 19 as well.
Right.
Yeah. So obviously, it was very impactful to us.
Yes.
Well, let me give you the overarching reason why it was so impactful. Toward the latter part of the book, I think it's near the last couple or 3 chapters in the book, the author Pirsig started writing about why people find it difficult to do things, and why when they do these things, they're not really of high quality. So he got into this discussion about gumption traps. Do you remember that?
Right. Yes,
Yeah.
I do.
So if I were to ask you, David, just not related to the book, but what does gumption by itself mean?
Well, to me, it's also related to the term bootstrap, but it really has to do with an internal self-reliance in approaching problem solving.
Would you say there's a zest about it,
Yes.
an enthusiasm?
Yes, a certain spice.
Yeah.
if you may.
I think perhaps when I was reading the book, I was doing a little bit of more reading about it in gumption, and I think perhaps it was used more so in maybe the 20s and 30s than was at that time, and then today, because
Right.
the gumption might be the enthusiasm in which you approach a certain topic or a hobby, or you have a certain skill set about it and you have a gumption for it. Maybe, right?
Well, to me, it leaned more towards a little bit of the problem solving side of things.
Well, that's true. I mean, certainly it was in the book.
Right.
Because how it was used in the book was the fictional character that was Pirsig, his character, was talking to his son, and he and his son in the book, in this fictional history, had decided to take a cross-country motorcycle ride. His
Right.
son would be on his motorcycle, he'd be on his motorcycle, and while they were going across country, he would teach his son life lessons, so to speak.
Yes.
Right? What happens to motorcycles if you ride them too much?
Well, they have a tendency to break down if they're not
Break down, need maintenance, that sort of thing. So he and his son I think they were somewhere in Arizona or something. I'm not sure exactly, because it's been, 25 plus 20, 45 years since I read the book. But they broke down, and he instructed his son to, get his tool set out and start looking to see what was wrong with his motorcycle. And I think there was some unusual rattling going on. I'm not exactly sure at this point in time, since I've read it so long ago. But his son came back to him and said, Dad, found the problem. I need a shim. This shim's worn out.
Right.
And he goes, we're not going to be able to fix it until we get to a parts store.
Yes.
You remember this?
Yes.
He said, no, son, go bring me the nippers. These are tin nippers. And this was when beer cans were made out of tin and not aluminum. I mean, you'd have a tough time crushing the beer can because it was made out of tin, where now you can just kind of look at it and the aluminum will crush, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say, it took some effort to crush the beer can. But his son brought him the nippers, and he said, you've got the wrong frame of mind. You've got this gumption trap. You're enthused about fixing it, but you're going about it all wrong. You've got this narrow-minded view of what it takes to maintain the bike.
Right.
That's pretty profound, don't you think?
Yes. Yes.
So his son was thinking about the quality of the part, and it had to be made by an OEM, an original engineering manufacturer, right?
Right.
You go to the store, you buy a shim from the parts store.
Right.
So when you do that, and I buy parts for my car and things, we expect the quality to be there, guaranteed, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So given that, is that a gumption trap? Because maybe there's some things that we can do in maintaining our own cars that we could do ourselves.
Right. I understand what you're talking about when you bring it back to the earlier years, because a lot of times people didn't have a lot of choices. They didn't have an auto parts store on every corner. And that was the case in this instance as well.
Right. They were out in the middle of the highway
Right.
somewhere in Arizona, I think it was. I could be wrong. But they would have to travel perhaps 100 miles or two to get to the place that they needed to find the part.
And hopefully they're open.
Right.
Right.
And hopefully they're open. So his son gave him the nippers, and he proceeded to bring me the shim. And he brought the shim that he'd taken off the motorcycle, and he proceeded to snip out one that looked exactly like the one that he'd taken off the motorcycle, except it had little parts of Coors on it, I think.
Right.
Because it was coming from a beer can, right? That was not meant as an advertisement. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. But he gave this back after he'd cut it out to his son and says, now go repair your bike.
Right.
And then he began to talk to his son about, people, they get into these habits of doing the same thing over and over and over again. And they go up and down the same pathway. And
Right.
pretty soon it's no longer a path, but it's a rut. You've seen those pathways. People go up and down them a lot, and they begin to wear out and wear down.
Right.
And he said, if you keep going up and down that pathway, it becomes a rut. And if you continue walking up and down it the same way, pretty soon the sidewalls begin to rise up around you. And you know what happens?
It turns into your grave.
Well, it could, but he said something before then. Ooh, that went to the wrong place there. Yeah. But I could see that. But he said, if you turn left and you turn right and you look, all you see is the side walls.
And you only have one direction.
You only have one direction, one way of looking at things.
Right.
You need to be able to pop up and look at the landscape to think about, is there a better way?
Is there another way?
Is there another way? Right?
Right.
So, I get into this discussion sometimes with my students, and we talk about on a project, you have three baselines: cost, schedule, and technical, right?
Absolutely.
And those are constraints. If you need to have it done by Friday, you got to get it done within that constraint. If you only have 30 hours to do it in, you got to get it done in the 30 hours by Friday. And you also have to meet the technical requirements. It has to be of the right quality. So we have to deal with constraints. So we may not be able to come up with the perfect solution.
Right.
But we can come up with the optimal solution that fits within the constraints. Yeah. Their constraints were they were out in the middle of the desert with no parts store around, so they came up with an optimal solution, one that worked. And so when you think about it from a business perspective, if you get caught in a gumption trap, Dave, have you ever been in one of those in business?
As a matter of fact, I have in my younger years, and it's taught me one of the most important lessons in my life.
Well, what was that?
Well, it had to do with a job that I'd just gotten, working in conveyor belting. and was given an assignment, and basically a job slip. We were given these job slips to complete assignments, and these were the projects that were given to us by the company to accomplish for them that they needed for their plants to run. And this particular one involved can cable, say for soup company. They have these overhead lines that bring these cans to where they might be filled and then capped, and
So there's a conveyor that takes the product that's a work in process
yes
to the different stations, then something's done to the can.
Yes.
Okay.
And so this was a can cable belt. And my assignment was it had like 4 plies in it to remove 2 of the plies, only 2 of the plies, not 3, not 4.
These are layers. Thickness.
Yes, and this was a plied belt. We had to cut it to a certain width and a certain length, and then remove 2 of these plies, and
it still had to work.
It still had to work, and you couldn't cut through that 3rd ply, or it wasn't any good. So this was accomplished on a Randall, was the name of the machine, but it was a leather working machine, and it was designed to cut through layers of leather. So the idea was that you'd set your depth in such a manner that it would only cut the 2 plies, and you'd set guides to the sides of the belt so that it would only cut in the length that you wanted it to.
So what happens if you made a mistake? Was the conveyor belt any good?
No, it was complete trash.
Wow.
And
we're not talking about something inexpensive, right?
No, absolutely not. These people were paying good money for this, and it was it had to be of the expected quality. Right?
You don't think about conveyor belts being an exact science in terms of things have to be precisely as they should in order to convey the product to the next station. But I guess there's more to it than just slapping it on rotors and let it turn.
Right. There's all sorts of types, and then there's also variations on those types. Right.
So how was your first stab at cutting the 2-ply off?
Well, unfortunately, Ron, you run several samples through because you don't run the actual material through. You make sure that you can run it well by running the samples first. And I was just having a terrible time of it, and running sample after sample and not having any results.
So was there something that maybe you had set up wrong, and did you actually talk to your supervisor about it?
Well, unfortunately, I did. And that's where the revelation came in. After having not achieving good results on it, I went back to him and I said, I can't do this. I had run down that rut where I did not get the results that I was looking for.
Same rut each time.
Same rut each time.
Wow.
Not realizing that there was something I was missing.
So there's only one way in your mind of getting this accomplished.
Right.
Okay. That certainly is a gumption trap.
Right. And one of the things that he told me was, well, if you can't, I'll find someone that can.
Ouch.
Yes.
Wow. There's a theory X in management, and that's more from the 80s than today. But the theory X in management says it's my way or the highway, and we don't really need you if you can't do it. Right. And that is kind of not a good way to manage. Really isn't. But how did it go for you?
Well, it just made me realize that if I really wanted to keep this job, that and it was important to me because I had a young family. I was a young man myself, and I realized that if I need to figure this out, and I needed to do it, and I needed to succeed with it. That it had been done before successfully, so obviously I could do it too, right?
Is that what you told yourself?
Yes.
Did that become like your mantra? It's like the little train that could. I can do this. I can do this.
I still use it today. I still use it today to help me find my success in my daily life.
It's kind of interesting because I did an episode on my other channel, Boomer Life Lessons and Stories. If you get a chance, please check it out. The first episode was about you are more capable than you think you
Yes,
are.
absolutely.
And so that's what you were telling yourself. I am
Yes.
more capable, essentially, than I
Yes.
think I am. So you were trying to climb out of that rut of the gumption trap.
Right. Right.
Well, what happened?
Well, I just started taking it step by step of what I needed to do, starting from step one to find out where it was that I was going wrong. And it's not always something that's obvious. Sometimes it's the little details that you miss. In this case, it
I got to
was
interject.
right.
I had an engineering manager one time. He told me, he said, Ron, there's 3 things you need to know about engineering. You know what they are? And I said, no. He said, details, details, details. So if you miss the little details, you're in trouble.
Details.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt.
No. So I went through it step by step, and I found out that it was something not very obvious, but the blades on the machine were not sharp. So it wasn't allowing me to set the depth properly, and it would take too much pressure or too little pressure, and so I couldn't get my spine depth.
So because they were dull,
right,
and never go to a sword fight with a dull sword, I guess.
absolutely.
But you were having to put more pressure on the belt, and the belt folded up,
Well, it would want to
deform.
either cut deeper into the ply or not deep enough, so the results were very inconsistent.
So you know what it sounds like? It sounds like your previous efforts, you were fixing Band-Aids,
Yes.
symptoms, right?
Symptoms,
Yeah, not the root cause.
but not the root cause.
Wow.
So once I found that the blade needed to be sharpened, and these were rotating blades, replaced them with some new blades that were sharpened properly, and was able to get a successful run on my
Wow.
test samples, and then was able to run this 250 feet length of belt
Wow.
through the machine
Without error.
without error.
Wow. And your gumption trap originally was, you were telling yourself, I can't do this.
Exactly.
This is beyond me.
Yes.
And you didn't allow yourself to critically think while you were in that kind of time frame.
Absolutely.
That's kind of interesting because, if I talk about gumption traps, and we're going to wrap this episode up because it's gone a little long, but gumption traps is nailing you down in one way of looking at things and not
Yes.
allowing you to think critically.
Outside the box.
You have to open up and look around on the landscape. And if you've dug yourself a rut, you're going to have to climb out of that little rut.
Absolutely.
And look at the landscape and think critically. And I think a lot of people do that. They start down a path and they meet the first obstacle or two, and they
Yes.
say, I can't do this. It's too difficult. I can't afford the time and energy.
Absolutely.
And they give up.
Yes.
It's kind of unfortunate. The other thing I would say, and maybe you would jump in on this, is that you have to think critically enough to know that you're dealing with the root cause of the problem and not the symptom of the problem. Because
Yes.
gumption traps will they're kind of alluring in that they lead you down this path that says this is the problem, but it's a symptom and not the problem. It's kind of like a fever. You might want to treat the fever, but you're not going to solve the problem. You got to locate where the infection is, right?
Right.
So I think those are 2 very good lessons that we can pull from this, from Pirsig's book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And oh, by the way, there's a lot more in there than gumption traps. First
Yes.
is, don't let yourself go up and down the pathway to the point that you're not thinking critically.
Right.
And the second thing is to evaluate what's going on and try to identify the root cause and
Right.
nip the root cause in the bud. Don't try to fix symptoms.
Right.
Last thoughts, Dave. What do you think?
Well, I think you're exactly right, Ron. And I hope that we've given you an important life lesson to learn from.
Yeah, beware of the gumption traps.
Yes.
And if I could make one recommendation to the crowd, I would say go off and find a copy, even if it's a paperback, of Pirsig's Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Zen is kind of the vehicle, and motorcycle
Right.
maintenance is the intent, right? And replace motorcycle maintenance with your life, right?
Right.
And apply what you read in there, because it really is a book that is full of life lessons that are meaty and can be very, very helpful.
Thought-provoking.
And with that, you have all my best, Dave.
Thank you, Ron.
We appreciate you joining us. And
Thank you for
please
joining us.
like, share, and subscribe, and comment down below. Thumbs up.
Thumbs
Comment
up.
down below.
Comment down below.
All right, guys. Take care and all the best.